All right, welcome everybody to a rather unfortunate episode of the Mike Sanello Show. I'd rather not be doing this, to be frank, but we had a ton of technical difficulty. So do go ahead, please, and share this if you'd like. I'm going to try to go over everything we talked about with Steve Harding. I know it seems like the audio came through okay. I have no idea what went wrong in terms of the technical difficulties that we were having throughout the course of the stream. It seems maybe it was Zoom was eating up bandwidth because I have an older version of Zoom or something. So if you guys want to chime in, I'm going to try to make this a call-in show if possible. Let me know if you want me to. The Discord the invite link should be in. It may not be in the description of this video actually, but I have a Discord server, and if you guys want to join the Discord server, put in the comment section if you want to talk about that. And I'll be taking your Q&A as we go. So anything you guys want to talk about, anything you guys want to bring up, any comments you have, any questions you have, happy to deal with them. It looks like everything is working just fine, which is extremely frustrating because I did absolutely nothing differently. I shut down OBS in both computers and I just started it right back up. And boom, here we are. We're doing exactly the same settings on everything. So I don't know what the heck went wrong. But anyway, so let me know too if you want me. I have the raw audio file. We can go back to YouTube, I guess. I have the raw file. And we can, I guess, listen to it. And then as we go along, maybe there's some visuals that would be helpful that I have on this screen. Let me make sure I have that set up correctly. I think I should. We want Chrome. We want this thing. And we want... Yeah, okay. So I can bring up things like I mentioned this graph when we had our conversation, greenhouse emissions by sector. This is from DEEP, and this is the total greenhouse emissions. And I'm going to interject a lot of my own kind of opinion on this, which, you know what, deal with it. Oh, I gotta fix this. I gotta fix this just a hair. Let's do this. Let's do this. And yeah, it's been a while since the Mike Sanello Show operated. I don't know why everything was so different, but this is one of the things that I wanted to go over was this emissions chart. We didn't have a lot of time to get into great detail on some of the background of things. I wanted very badly to go over things like Malloy's Executive Order 46 and the GC3 that created, and the reason the 2017 Millstone Agreement, the real reason the 2017 Millstone Agreement existed in the first place, and why the 2020 contract was entered into with the state. And so, folks who didn't get the message, the enemy here isn't Eversource. The enemy here is Hartford. As Steve was explaining, that as much as we all don't like Eversource, the reason we don't like Eversource is because it's a publicly protected monopoly. It's a government guaranteed monopoly. As in, there are things that they can do because they're protected by government. And I gotta actually do the camera adjustment here. This is bothering me. We're gonna come over. Okay, so actually we want to go the other way. All right. This is bothering the heck out of me. Yeah, we want to be right about there. Like I said, it's been a while since we did a Mike Sanello Show, so we're doing things kind of on the fly here. So let me know what you guys want me to talk about in regards to that. If you want me to play the entire thing back and we can go over some of the stuff that may not have made sense, we can do that. I'm willing to stay up late if folks are willing to stay up late, but we got to have folks in the comment section. Oh, geez, YouTube, nice job, not actually launching. All right, so let's see if anyone's in Facebook. I don't see any comments on Facebook. A lot of people are watching on Facebook. Go ahead, dump your comments into the comment section. That's what I'm here for. So here's where we start. Let me pull up my notes from what I wanted to ask Steve, but we kind of ran out of time here. So it seems to me like there are three categories of things that me and Steve could have gone over. That's kind of what I tried to do. One is the public benefits part of your bill, right? Why it's there, what it is, and what it goes towards. And I have some notes on what that actually goes towards, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that up very quickly. If you guys want me to do the exact details, anything you guys want me to talk about, we can do that. We can go into great detail. And then the other thing is the overall rate increases. And then the third thing is, okay, what are the solutions to these two potential problems? Excuse me. I also had the caveat that, listen, I know Eversource. My bill is My bill is from, yeah, where the heck is it? Maybe we can get this on camera. Eversource. Yeah, my bill is from Eversource. So I don't really know United Illuminating all that well. So forgive me. So the first thing is, where is that money from the public benefits charge going? And it seems like the bulk of the increase is the result of an increase in, is the result of an opportunity cost that Eversource incurs by being forced to purchase at 5 cents a kilowatt hour electricity from Millstone, from the Millstone power plant. And because natural gas because it's a fluctuating market, now offers a lower price, right? There's a cost. Like if they didn't have to buy from Millstone, they'd go out and get the lower price because they're going to look for the cheapest price for their goods too. Like I'm a landscaper. I'm going to find the cheapest gas I can find that's going to work in my lawnmowers. I'm not going to pass on to the customer the most expensive gas if we're talking about something that's perfectly fungible like electricity. Now, gas is not gas is not gas is not gas. 94 grade gas is better than 87 gas. I suppose it would be better. There isn't really a great example of this in my field. Water. Okay, so I'm mixing chemical pesticides, right? And water is water is water is water is water. I'm not going to go to Stop and Shop and buy water by the bottle, like in the bottle, and buy the Poland Springs water when I can just get it from the tap for like 9 cents a gallon, right? So in that case, you have something that's perfectly fungible. Electricity is electricity is electricity is electricity is electricity, right? In the house, it's going to be the exact same thing, right? We're talking about either 110, 220, 125, 121 or 240 in the household for all intents and purposes. And everything 110 is the same, right? We're talking about, it's all going to be on either a 15 or 20 amp line. Electricity is electricity is electricity. So it is in Eversource's interest to go out and get the electricity from the cheapest source they can possibly get it from. But they can't do that. And because they can't do that, there's an opportunity cost that they eat in this year because the price is actually of the market rate is actually below the nuclear rate that we've agreed to in this Millstone contract. Last year, as Steve explained, the rate was actually above the Millstone rate. The market rate was above the Millstone rate. So what you actually had was a credit balance in terms of the generation rate. That's according to Steve. He also pointed out that when we went over this in detail on our statements here, that if you actually review your monthly bill, there are 4 parts of the bill: supply, transmission, local delivery, public benefits. Now, I talked to Billy Mo Buckby. He's my representative from the 67th district, and we went over. I had a lot of questions for him, and he was happy to meet with one of his constituents, me, throughout the course of the week to sit down and answer questions. I don't think that this is any big reveal that that I had a conversation with Billy Mo Buckby, my state rep. I hope you guys have conversations with yours. And what we found out is that the actual supply and transmission and local delivery rates overall have gone down over the past month or two. And like 100% of the reason your bill is going up, and this is a bit of a lie spread by certain folks in a very partisan manner, it's all the public benefits. All of it. All of the increase in your bill is the public benefits, right? You can't go from 5% of my bill to 13% of my bill to 25% of my bill and have at net, in terms of the rate, have it be anything other than public benefits if everything is tied evenly to usage. And it is. So in the case of usage, yes, usage did increase in all 3 of those months. But if I go over my bill, like here's the supply. Like the supply went up and then it went way down. The transmission went a little bit up and then state went up a tiny bit. The local delivery went up a little bit and then up a little bit. Public benefits went up a ton. Public benefits went up, 7-fold for me over the course of those 2 months. So what is that public benefits portion actually going toward? And the bulk of it is going toward this, toward a reimbursement for this, for the Millstone deal. That is that opportunity cost that we talked about. That's something that we really can't do much about right now because, and I'll bring that up. Let's go to that agreement. Let's go to the actual agreement. Here is the Millstone Power Procurement. This is from the Office of Legislative Research. This is a summary of from the Office of Legislative Research, which Billy Buckme assures me is as neutral as you can possibly get when providing these summaries, politically neutral as you can possibly get. And I trust him on that. If he says it's not partisan, I'm assuming that the state Republican Party has attorneys to basically jump in and be like, this is BS. This is political partisan BS, and you're not allowed to do that. So fix that. So I imagine I can trust him when he says it's fair neutral, right? And what it does is it breaks down everything it breaks down the entire procurement deal. And the procurement deal is a percentage. It looks like, I think it's so EverSource is required to, this is percentage of Millstone's output each EDC must purchase per year. And EDC is the supplier, in this case, EverSource. So percentage of Millstone's output that EverSource must purchase by year. And you can see that number actually went down. The percentage of productivity actually went down from 44% to 41%. So what should have happened is that it should have, the rate, the dollar amount that goes towards that offset should actually have come down. But it didn't because, again, of the loss incurred. Now, again, a portion of that, like I said, a portion of the public benefits the rest of it is going to other things. And those things here, let me bring this back up here. Those things are things that can be amended very quickly. This is a deal that goes to 2029. This ain't getting touched for a long time. Not unless you put some real radicals into office in Hartford, which I'm totally in favor of. I'm totally in favor of electing some like crazy libertarians to get in there and say, shh, we're done with this deal, right? And sue us. Come at me, brah. Right? Like I'm totally okay with electing crazy libertarians that are going to have the balls to have that approach. But realistically, that ain't going to get touched. And realistically, as long as the natural gas price isn't as low as it currently is, as long as the opportunity cost isn't as substantial as it is, then this increase won't happen. This added public benefit portion won't happen. What people are really outraged about is really the other half of that. Right. And as Steve explained, a huge portion of the remaining 23% or so is a one-time offset to EverSource's costs for being told by the state you can't shut off anyone's power for 4 years. For 4 years. No other state in the union went more than, I think it's 16 months. No other state in the union went to even 2 years on this moratorium. Connecticut went to 4 years. And what happens? I have landscaping customers. What happens when I can't charge, when I absolutely have to, by law, provide that service? And if they just refuse to pay, I can't just say, all right, well, I'm not mowing your lawn anymore. Like, I've had to deal with that in the past. A customer decides that 6 mows in and I'll get you back. I promise, man. Well, we're 6 mows in and I'm just not mowing anymore. You owe me way too much money. I'm not mowing anymore until I get paid. And once in a very rare while, you come across a customer that just won't pay it. And then you got to fish or cut bait. In that case, you cut bait, right? And that's what the electrical company should be doing if it's an actually privately run company and we have an actual market for the thing, which we don't, because we have one supplier in our area, which is EverSource. And UI is the one supplier for the eastern extreme of Connecticut. Topic we can get into. Let me know in the comments if that's something you guys want to get into, right? So of that 23%, a huge portion of it is going toward paying down that debt. As in, for 4 years, you and I paid our bills, right? I'm caught up. I just paid mine. Mine's not due for another 2 weeks, and I paid it last week, right? I've been caught up the whole time. But if I wanted to, for 4 years, I could just be like, up yours, EverSource, I'm not paying. And they couldn't shut off my electricity. Now, what that means is that the minute the moratorium expires, they're handing me a gigantic and ridiculous bill, and then they're going to shut off my electricity. Now, if I was the type that was like, screw it, I know I'm moving to Florida, right? I know I'm moving to New Hampshire, a more based state, right? A more politically optimal state before this moratorium expires. Screw it. Well, now they have no way to collect that debt. So what EverSource did was, because they couldn't really do anything with this debt, as they came to the state of Connecticut, who tied their hands. Hartford handcuffed them and said, we need to get paid for this. And it's just like if I was running my landscaping business, if I was told you have to mow their lawns and you can't not mow their lawn, no matter what, no matter whether regardless of whether or not they pay the bill. Yeah, I'm going to come to the state who told me that I have to eat this to get paid for the money that I ate, right? And who protected those customers who refused to pay their bills. This is just it's an amnesty moratorium. It's an amnesty bill essentially, right? And for 4 years we let the state forced Eversource to deal with this. And for the rest of us who stupidly paid our bills, right? Now that's getting dumped on us. And I do wonder just how many of those Eversource customers said, I'm moving in 6 months, screw it, right? I wonder how many of those Eversource customers said, well, I've already been approved for the loan in my house in Florida. Bye-bye, Connecticut, right? It's going to wreck my credit score, but who cares? The mortgage is already approved. The contracts are already signed. We're moving down to Florida. Bye, right? So that's the issue here. And it should be a one-time cost offset, which is why the Republicans in February proposed that, why don't we use ARPA funds? Because the money was there. I spoke to Billy Mo-Buckby. He assures me 100% the money was there. And what it went to was higher education. It went to things that in the end are there to offset, tuition payments for stuff that has to do with college, which may be meritorious. It may be meritorious, but it wasn't like we're talking about basically paying back damages, right? In this case, a supposedly private company was damaged, right? The state drove a truck through their store and they expect the state to pay that bill, right? A DOT truck driver rammed the truck right through, one of Eversource's buildings. You would expect the DOT to pay back that damage. That's what we're talking about here. So there's actually a libertarian case for the state to use that ARPA money, which, by the way, was already collected, right? Money printer already went burr, right? The money is already in our laps. So now what? Now, to me, you just write a check to every taxpayer, right? Because that's the most, that's the closest thing you're going to get to, a free market principled way to spend that money. But that's not what happened. And that's why you guys have put together this petition. And, I really wanted to hammer this down in detail, right? I want to go over this petition. Yeah, like I'm aware of this Facebook group. I love this Facebook group. If you guys want to share this review video to this group, since it seems to actually be working, please do, right? And this is how I learned about this petition, which I'm in favor of and which I signed, which I don't know if it shows that I signed it, but yes, I did sign on to this petition. Steve said he was totally on board with this. Now, he said he was totally on board with it because one of the things that the Republicans proposed was, putting this fee onto the ledger, having this be a thing that's going to be that goes through the budget process. Now, to me, that seems like you're just passing the bill on from ratepayers to taxpayers. Now, that is sort of in a way to potentially theoretically get those people who didn't pay their bills to pay their bills. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a really dubious claim to suggest that would be the case. Steve didn't, but hypothetically, if that's the claim that you're making, I don't get it. So demand Government Lamont and PURA to cease public benefit charge from the electric bill. And this goes over details. Basically, that's there. Like I don't really need to go into great detail about that. But yeah, totally on board with that. And Steve seemed to be totally on board with that too. Speaking of which, let me find the there was the Republican proposals. All right, let me go to their plans here. So the GOP did have, so the GOP is demanding that Governor Lamont bring the state legislatures back into session now. And what the Republican lawmakers want are basically 4 points. I want to see if I can find the actual formal proposals that they want here. I don't see them. But these are the four things. This is from State Senator Steve Harding. This is from his office. This is what Steve said. CT Senate GOP statement on Eversource filing and cost of Connecticut electricity. This is from May 17th of this year. So this is, this has been going on for a while. Earlier this month, Connecticut Senate Republicans sought to amend energy legislation to include a set of policy goals which aim to bring about long-term rate reduction, long-term stability for consumers. Electricity costs in Connecticut are too damn high. One reason for that is current government policies are inflating rather than limiting the cost of energy for individuals and families. We need to change the direction of our energy policies to stop future increases in electricity costs and eventually reduce them. Connecticut Republicans have a plan to reduce energy costs for every family in our state and will fight for this year and years to come. The Republicans' amendment, which was voted down by majority Democrats, sought to do the following. One, limit all future power purchasing agreements. We'll have to go into that in detail in a minute. So that no contract can be for more than 150% over the wholesale electric market price. The wholesale electric market price right now is somewhere between 3 and 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And what's coming down the pike is a plan to buy electricity from wind at something like 5 times that rate, between 15 and 17 cents a kilowatt hour. And the idea is that if you bring the legislature back to session, you can put the kibosh on that and find some other way to deal with this. Now, the real solution is to use the Iroquois line that's already in Connecticut, expand it, and allow for natural gas. We're going to get into why that's not possible. Redefine Class 1 renewable energy sources to include all forms of hydropower and all nuclear power to lower the cost of renewable energy sources and bring relief for taxpayers. This is really complicated. This is where we're going to get into energy credits and how the actual how Millstone is actually paid and the requirements for Millstone to buy back certain RECs, the energy credit systems. It's a really complex thing. If you guys want me to go over that, let me know in the comment section. We can go over that. 3, separate the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, and PURA. We talked about that. Steve actually talked about that. So PURA actually has to answer to DEEP. And I talked to Billy Buckby, and the way he explained it to me, again, I'm not going to put words into his mouth, but this is the way I understand it. So I'm going to use my words based on what Billy Mo Buckby explained to me, which is that PURA's chartering documents suggest that PURA's interest is to protect the taxpayer. It's to protect the ratepayer, right? That's the people that they're representing. And yet DEEP has this separate interest toward green energy movements. And those green energy movements are necessarily more expensive, and DEEP openly admits to that, right? And increasing rates, which is what these things would do, these green energy policies would do, necessarily is in direct conflict. It's not in competition for another thing. It's in direct conflict with PURA's mandate to protect the consumer from high rates. So you have a clear conflict of interest, a straightforward conflict of interest. And separating the two bodies allows for what is effectively a partisan political position within DEEP to be removed from PURA, at least potentially, and to put somebody in charge of PURA who can just completely ignore DEEP, completely ignore DEEP's interests and say, no, we're here to protect the ratepayer, and that's it. Again, Eversource isn't the bad guy here. We're seeing it. It's Hartford that's the bad guy. So this is one of the things we talked about with Steve. 4, study ways to increase natural gas supply in the New England region. This seems to me like a sneaky way of saying, oh, we're going to get a study. And this study is going to tell us that natural gas is way, way cheaper than wind and solar. Oh, and by the way, modern natural gas plants put out essentially no CO2, right? So this is basically the study that they want to basically get to say, listen, we got to get more natural gas. We got to forget the 2030, the 2040, and the 2040 benchmarks, and we got to get more natural gas because that's what's going to save us money, right? And I'll go over those benchmarks if you guys want. I'm going to go over them in a minute anyways because we talked about them briefly, but I want to go into greater detail. Study moving public policy charges off of ratepayer bills and into the budget. And this is what we're talking about. Now, I'm on board with the petition to just outright ban it. They just outright ban the public benefits charge. And it was Billy Mo Buckby who was the lead sponsor of the bill to get your Eversource bill to get your Eversource bill to have as a separate line item a line entitled public benefits. It's always been in your bill, right? But it's always been hidden in these tiny little, like, super fine print, right? Right, the super duper fine print that's way at the bottom there. I really should I really should set autofocus onto the camera at some point, right? So it was Billy Mo Buckby here in the 67th district who was the lead sponsor in the bill to get that out. And that's why you guys are outraged in the first place, because there's daylight now on these bills. And daylight is, in this case, a great disinfectant. And you guys saw it. And you're like, what the hell, man? What is this? And why is this percentage going up so much? And that's the whole point, is to get that separated so that you can basically inform the public and have the public, once they're informed, give you the expected informed response, which is, what the hell, man? Right? So that's what the fifth point is. And they want to come back into session to basically have these 5 points, to basically have these 5 points brought before the legislature, and to potentially avoid another agreement, just like the Millstone one, for wind energy, and to a lesser extent solar energy potentially, that's way, way, way more expensive than even the Millstone rate that we're paying for right now. Now, in a proper free market, the proper response, and I brought this up to Steve, in 2017, when Millstone came to the state and said, we need a guarantee, right? Otherwise, we're shutting down. The truth is that nuclear is probably the most regulated energy production sector. And, with all of the red tape hurdles that they had in front of them, they decided that the capital improvements that they were required to make by law were improvements that were going to be so costly because of the same red tape that requires them by law to make those improvements, that they just weren't going to do it. They're just, screw this, we're out. Unless we have some guaranteed buyback, we're out. And that's why they came to the state. And the state handcuffed itself by putting through these benchmarks that made, Millstone provides a roughly 40% of the energy to the entire state, right? Without Millstone, you got to make up for that. And when you have a shortage of supply, what happens to prices? Prices go whoop. In a proper free market, however, you have what's called competition. And you say to Millstone, all right, well, bye. Bye-bye. We're not bailing you out. We're just going to expand the Iroquois line and dump a whole bunch of natural gas at ridiculously cheap prices in the state. And that's what's happening. In 2017, fractured rock drilling, fracking, made natural gas, drill baby drill, ridiculously cheap. And because it was so ridiculously cheap, the purchasers, the suppliers of the electricity to your home, Eversource, UI, said, we're not buying from Millstone anymore. They're charging too much for their nuclear. We're going to go to natural gas. Now, natural gas, of course, has a fluctuating price market, right? Which is why nuclear, over the course of, the 60-year lifespan of modern nuclear generators, is cheaper, but you need the 60 years, right? Because of these benchmarks, you have no mechanism for just saying, screw it, drill, baby drill, bring in the natural gas, and just dump like half a dozen to a dozen natural gas plants in Connecticut. You have no way to do that. And I'm going to go over what those benchmarks are, because everyone complained about the Millstone agreement, and I'm on board with you. But a lot of these legislators had their hands tied by Democrats in this case, by the legislation, by these benchmarks that just about every Republican in the House and Senate in Connecticut oppose. Just about all of them oppose this. And I do too. Where all of this originates from is from, and we talked about this with Steve in the stream, just so people understand, because you guys didn't get to see this, is from section 22A-200, and we're going to go over this in greater detail. These are the benchmarks I was telling you about. Benchmark 1, not later than January 1st, 2020, the state shall reduce the level of emissions of greenhouse gases. 1, not later than January 1st, 2020, so this already happened, to a level at least 10% below the level admitted in 1990. 2, not later than January 1st, 2030, to a level of at least 45% below the level admitted in 2001. 3, not later than January 1st, 2040, to a level of 0%. 0% from electricity supplied to electric customers in the state. 0%. So that means there's no way to just build a natural gas plant. And in fact, since it's to a level of 0% from electricity supplied to electric customers, that means the plant that just opened up in Dover, we can't buy their electricity. We can't do it. There's a few natural gas plants in Massachusetts as well. Can't buy their gas. Can't buy their electricity. You have to buy it from wind, solar, hydro, or potentially nuclear. And that's by 2040. That's 16 years. That's 16 years. That's really not that long a time from now. Not later than January 1st, 2050, to a level at least 80% below the level emitted in 2001. And 5, all of these referenced in this shall be determined by the Commissioner of Energy and Environmental Protection. Okay, so we're going to go real quick to the definitions. Direct emissions means emissions from a source that are owned or operated in whole or in part by an entity or facility, including but not limited to emissions from factory stacks, manufacturing processes and vents, and companies owned or leased, and a company owned or leased motor vehicles. Facility means a building or structure, installation located on or at any one or more contiguous or adjacent properties of an entity. So what this means is this definitely includes power plants. And this is important because this is the graph I wanted you guys to see. This is the graph I wanted you to see. You see this? So this is from DEEP themselves. And this report was from, it looks like either 2021 or 2022. I think it was drafted in 2000, preliminary 2022 results. Okay, so here we go. This is from 2022. This is really recent. Okay, and what you can see is from 1990 to 2020, that's the decline in total emissions, total CO2 emissions, economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions, all of them across the state. We just freaking barely got past this first threshold. Just freaking barely. Okay? And on top of that, if we're to draw a line through that, and I can't do that very quickly, but if we're to draw a line through that, can I do that really quickly? No, I can't do that really quickly. I mean, this trend line is going to look like this, right? Like, we're not hitting this benchmark for 2030. It's not happening, right? And there's a reason to that, because there's a limit, right? Like, as you get closer to zero, it gets harder and harder to get a percentage point down. And here's the thing. On this same page, you can see where the actual greenhouse emissions declines are happening. In transportation, you're just over 15, and now you're, higher? Right? This trend line is basically flat. We can go to residential, and the trend line is just south of flat. Commercial is actually probably just north of flat. Industrial is actually probably just north of flat. Municipal waste is actually probably just north of flat. Agricultural is just south of flat, and natural gas leakage is flat. But in terms of raw amounts and in terms of relative amounts, this is where it's coming from. This green line right here, all of it. ALL, all of it is coming from this green line. All of it is coming from electricity consumption, which means it's coming from the generation plants. It's coming from these public policies imposed on these generation plants. That's where all of it's coming from. And what you can see is right now they're at like 2.5, whatever these are. And as I said, as you get closer and closer to zero, it gets harder and harder to get percentage points down. So the reality of the matter is that unless these other sectors start going way, way, way down, which they're not doing, they're just not doing. And there's a technological limit. There's a physics limit to how quickly you can have these other sectors suddenly decline, right? And it's things like municipal waste. How are you going to get that significantly lower than where it is? Dealing with garbage. How do you get that any lower than it already is? It's already really, really low, right? And interesting that residence is higher than commerce and industry in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. But that's a conversation for another day. So what that means is that there's no way we get through this threshold to that benchmark, number one. And number two, the only way, even if you're going to assume there is a possibility of us doing this, is by saying all the natural gas gone, all of it. Now, that's already a policy position for 2040. That's not on that graph because that wasn't passed until 2022. I think I actually have that bill. Yeah. So this is a Public Act 22-5 that shows the new benchmark. This, see it underlined here. That's the addition. So everything that's not underlined was already there. Everything that's underlined was added. Not later than January 1st, 2040, to a level of 0% from electricity supplied to electric customers in the state. And you'll notice there are these other benchmarks. So the question is, where do these other benchmarks come from? How long have they been around? Well, we have an answer to that. Let me pull that page up. This is from, again, this is 22A-200 greenhouse gases. And you can see where all of these things came from, right? So effective July 13th, 2025. So history, Public Act 05-288, so that's 2005, made a technical change in subdivision 4. So there's a technical, this is definitions, excuse me. Let's go to the actual bill. It made a technical change in subsection B. So B would be on or before 2010. This is basically just reporting, right? 2008, so PA 0898 replaced former subsections A to D with new subsections A to D, RE, greenhouse gas emissions limits and reporting requirements pursuant to PA 1180. All right, so pursuant to PA 1180, Commissioner of Environmental Protection was changed editorially by the revisers of Commission on Effective. So PA 1882 amends subsection A by adding new subdivision 2, that's the 2030 threshold, and redesignating subdivisions 2 and 3 as subdivisions 3 and 4 effective June 2018. PA 22.5, which we just talked about, amended by adding subdivision 3. So 1882 added this. Okay? 22-5 added this. All of the rest of this has been around for a long, long time. Excuse me. So it's been kind of known that these benchmarks were in place. But where does this 2030 come from? 2030 comes from 18-82, which we have. Right here, 18-82. Why was this put in place? Where does this benchmark come from? Why did 1882 emerge in the first place? Well, the answer is that it emerged from the CG3. What the heck are the CG3? So the CG3 were a body created by, and this is where it all originates. All of this originates in April 22nd, 2015 with Governor Dannel Malloy's Executive Order number 46. Whereas, and these are just the reasons why this thing went into place, right? Whereas the state is in position to achieve the 2020 target well ahead of schedule. No, it achieved it like a year or two ahead of schedule. Whereas in order to meet the ambitious 2050 target, so even Democrat Malloy calls the 2050 target ambitious, coordination among state agencies, local governments, business and industry, and non-government organizations is necessary, as this diversity of perspectives will ensure that policy and program recommendations are more robust. Shorthand for this is how much of this is how much of the state we're going to have to wreck to make this happen. This is how much of the state we're going to have to wreck to make this happen. Okay? The Governor's Steering Committee on Climate Change, originally established in 2002, included only state agency and personnel as being an initiative today. So the whereas just explain what the thought process for the now there I4. To order and direct, 1, the existing Governor's Steering Committee on Climate Change here is hereby disbanded, and there is established a new Governor's Council on Climate Change. The council, this is now called the GC3, that shall examine the efficacy, GC3, Governor's Council on Climate Change, GC3s, that shall examine the efficacy of existing policies and regulations designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and identify new strategies to meet the established emissions reduction targets, right? So new strategies to meet the established emission reduction targets. Basically, tell us legislation that we're going to pass to potentially make these targets. The council will be administered through the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, which shall provide staff support, and the council shall meet at least quarterly at dates, times, and locations to be established by the chair, establish interim goals that, if met, will ensure the state will achieve the 2050 target. So here's establish the interim goals. C, monitor greenhouse gas emissions levels in Connecticut annually to establish whether the state is poised to meet the interim goals in the 2050 target. D, recommend policies, regulations, or legislative actions that will assist in achieving interim goals and 2050 targets. E, report its findings and recommendations to the Governor and Office of State Policy Management in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes 22A-200A, no later than January 1st, 2016, and biennially after. So we actually have the report. We have the report right here. I'll give you links if you guys want them. Right? And this is where we get the 2030 benchmark. Participating members of New England governors and Eastern Canadian premiers resolution. So, since the time, Connecticut has advanced numerous other forward-thinking public policies, legislation programs, and programs that the GHG emission that address GHG emissions. For example, becoming a participating member of the New England governors and Eastern Canadian premiers resolution to adopt a 2030 reduction market range of at least 35% to 45% below 1990 levels. We adopted 45. So this is from that initial report. Okay? And this is something that must have happened before this report was released in 2016. I think it has on the cover the date. July 15th through January 2016 represents an exploratory phase. So I'm imagining this was somewhere in January of 2016. So we knew in January of 2016 what was coming down the pike because of this, right? And it's on the screen right now. We knew it was coming down the pike. And it originates from Dan Malloy's Executive Order 46. So all of this, I explained all of this to explain why the Millstone Agreement in 2017 was agreed, the idea for it at least, was agreed to in the first place. And, a lot of people have been bringing up that the most vocal opponent to these public benefits charges has been Billy Mo Buckby. And he has been. I showed you guys videos, right? And in 2017, he, in fact, voted yes in favor of this deal. Let me bring that up real quick. There he is. So, in fact, Billy Mo Buckby was a yes. Steve Harding was a member of the House. He was a congressman at the time. So we can let's just do a Control F to find him because this is not laid out in perfect alphabetical order. You can see on the left of him, no. He voted no. So this was a very, very, very split vote, right? Those voting yay, 75. Those voting nay, 66. And what you're going to see as you go down the line is that this is not something that everybody was in favor of, right? This is not down party lines at all. And the reason that certain people did vote for it, for the most part, was this handcuffing. I have it in part of my conversation with Billy Buckby was, listen, this is the reason I voted for this. It was because we were handcuffed. We were handcuffed by the state and the existing policies, and it's that GC3 and those benchmarks. There's no way to achieve these benchmarks without that nuclear power plant. No way to do it. And if we don't have that nuclear power plant while we're still trying to achieve those benchmarks, what you're going to have is rolling brownouts. Hence the bill. Do we really want to be California? And by the way, we can go to this is I should probably figure out what date this was released. August 2024. This is updated August 21st, 2024. This is according to USA Today. So whatever that means in terms of reliability and bias, right? So according to USA Today, these are the highest ratepayers rates in the country. Number one is Hawaii. That's unremarkable. That's what you would expect from a state that is an archipelago chain in the Pacific, right? Thousands of miles from the mainland. You would fully expect in that situation, unless they had some giant offshore oil stash, which they don't, you would fully expect them to have the highest rates, right? After that is Rhode Island, and then California, and then Massachusetts, and then here we are. Here we are in continental U.S., fourth place. That is ridiculous. And here's why it's ridiculous. We're behind Maine. We're behind New Hampshire. We're behind Vermont. We're behind New York. How? Vermont, 2098. New York, 2344. And Connecticut's 27.4. How? How are we that far behind? Well, I realize that we're in New England. We don't get a whole lot of sunlight. It's really cold in the wintertime. Right? You would expect that because there's an off-sized demand, right? You would fully expect that there would be increased prices. But that doesn't align with, some of these other states. So the other thing that's interesting here is that, one of the states that's ahead of us is California at 29.49. That should absolutely never be the case. With the amount of sunlight that they get, with the nice weather that they have, this should not be the case. But that's what's coming down the pike when you have these policy positions that do things like create shortages. When you create shortages of supply, you necessarily see increases in price. And when you create these shortages, you have what's in California, rolling brownouts. rolling brownouts. So that kind of explains how we got there. Now, the real solution to all this, like I said, is to open up a free market, but we don't have that. And people are saying, well, the state should just subsume Eversource. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's a solution at all either. I think what you should do, if that's going to be the case, is devolve it, right? If you devolve this down to the town levels, then you have at least some level of competition created by the fact that you can, in New Milford, just go to Brookfield. In New Milford, you could just move to Bridgewater. In New Milford, you could just move to Kent. It's way easier to move a few miles down the road to cross a town line than it is to move across a state line. Especially since, like, to get to like actually cheap, like, here, let's go back to this page. To get to somewhere that's like even remotely cheap, I mean, you got to go pretty far out of the Northeast. The first state that's not really in the Northeast here, we can just go back through this list here. In terms of highest rates, page 3, right? So we have Hawaii, okay, California, because communism, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire. Well, Alaska is, not continental U.S. New York, Vermont, I guess Michigan you could go to, but who wants to go to Michigan, right? New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania, D.C. So what, like Wisconsin? That's how far away you're going to go, Michigan or Wisconsin, to really find significantly lower rates? Right, and of course, you're going to see that, places like Florida, Alabama, Colorado, Texas, Arizona, Minnesota, Oregon, New Mexico, Indiana, South. These are the lowest rates are in Nebraska, North Dakota, Idaho, and Missouri. And that's not because they have enormous supply. It's not because they have huge cities that allow them to develop technology in a certain way that might be advantageous to those states. No, it's because of policy. It's just strictly a matter of policy. Here they have. I'm sure they have broadly more free markets. So I'd imagine in that sector, they also have more free markets. The real solution to this isn't for the state to subsume the only two EDCs, the providers. If you're going to go that route, if government's going to be in control of it, you would devolve it to the towns. So you'd have 169 different providers. And at least if you devolve things to the town, I just went into my mayor in the gas station by chance. I take care of, I plow one of the driveways for the councilman on town council. I mow one of the councilman's yards, a different councilman actually, right? I have personal cell phone numbers of half the council in my town. I'm personal friends. I hired the son of one of the members of the Board of Ed for my company. That's not the case with Hartford. Yeah, I know Steve. Yeah, I know Billy, right? I can reach out to Pat Callahan, right? But when it comes to actually getting something done, it is really hard. I have no idea how I would even get hold of Ned Lamont. No idea how that conversation I just had with Senator Harding would happen with Ned Lamont. I know how it would happen with Mayor Bass because he's been on the show several times now. I would call him up and I'd say, come on the show, and he would come on the show. Done. Right? So if that's going to be the case, if we're going to have the government take care of this, then it should be devolved. Just like in Wallingford. The reason Wallingford's rates are so low is because it was devolved. It was brought the other way. Because you have more control over the thing if it's localized. And the way you maximize that localization, of course, is to have the individual handle that, which would be represented in a market, which we don't have. Right? So that's the real long-term solution. I don't know if that's ever going to come to fruition. I hope I've explained that as much as I can. It looks like we have some comments, so we're gonna go through this. Jana Larkin, if we as customers are forced to pay this, then why not less over a longer period of time? Fair. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I can bring that up to Steve next time he comes on. He'll probably come on in 2 weeks. Let's see if we can do that. Greg says, NIMBY, not in my backyard. I think he's actually not calling somebody NIMBY. I think he's calling it. Greg, in quotes, AI already Al or AI? I think it's AI. It's hard to read this text. Already uses as much energy as a small country. It's only the beginning. The energy needed to support data storage, it must be AI, is expected to double by 2026. Yeah, this is a serious problem. This is an extremely serious problem because when you have these server farms, they need to be freezing freaking cold. And those servers those servers are just like space heaters. They're just space heaters. So those server farms need to have ridiculous HVAC. They're extremely expensive AC. They devote a ton of money to HVAC and a ton of money to air conditioning, which is why, since a lot of the server farms are in California and certain parts of California that are actually not cool, they're actually pretty damn hot, you need a lot of that. So he's not wrong. Bottom line, this is Greg again, short of a one-time potential patch, we are screwed due to left policies, ensuing inflation, transmission upgrades, and AI data center energy requirements. Get used to higher prices. Not wrong. I do not believe Eversource is the source of the high rates. Yeah, that's from Greg again too. That's exactly what we were saying. That's exactly what Steve and I were saying. Is that like Eversource is not the bad guy here. It's the state. It's Hartford that's the bad guy. And I'll say something that's almost a direct quote from Billy from our conversation. I don't think he's going to, again, I don't think I'm really revealing anything that's a big secret. I don't think he's going to be offended for me to tell folks about our conversation. Again, he's a sitting congressman, and he met with one of his constituents, to answer questions about a serious problem that he's on board with. I bet you if you guys all just reached out in good faith and said, Billy, I'd love to come and I can't buy you dinner because election rules, and campaign contribution stuff and that stuff. But, let's just chat for like half an hour, right? And on an evening, I bet you he would do it. I bet you he would do it for just about everybody. But he did it for me. And what he said to me is, Eversource, just like I said, Eversource is not the bad guy. He said, we're the bad guy. We're the bad guy. Right? I'm the bad guy. Right? I believe his exact words were, we're the bad guy. It's Hartford. The root problem here is Hartford. Election in November. So yeah, Greg is 100% right. I don't think that this is an Eversource issue nearly so much as it is a Hartford issue. Take advantage of public benefit, including solar. I think I see what he's saying. So because there are all of these solar offsets, if you're not taking advantage of them in the home, then you're just being foolish, even though those offsets are wrong and shouldn't be there in the first place. You got to take it's in your interest. I won't say you should, but it is in your interest to take advantage of that. So it seems like everybody's, we're done here with commentary. It's getting kind of late. And this is really more than anything just to test the live stream. I'm going to give you some bad news. The video is ruined on the recorded version. So this is the best we're going to be able to do. Let me know, folks. I'll stay up late tomorrow night too, if need be. I got a lot of work on my plate for tomorrow, but I'll make it happen. I will make it happen. We'll go live again tomorrow night to do a full review of that actual footage. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. Again, it seems like we're all done with comments. Looks like it. Just Jana and Greg. So I just want to let you know, sincerest apologies for the tech issues before. I have no idea what the issue is. We're doing the exact same thing right now and no tech issue. So I genuinely have no idea what the issue is. But with all of that, I hope I've covered why we've gotten to this point, right? And why things have been what they have been. Remember Dan Malloy's Executive Order 46. This is where basically all of this emerges from. Dan Malloy. And, the issue, again, Eversource is not the bad guy. Eversource is not the bad guy. And this is not me just, So one last thing. One very quick last thing. Eversource's CEO makes, his salary is only like $1.75 million a year. And in terms of his payout, his most recent payout for a year was $18.8 million. Let me go Eversource customers. Eversource number of customers. Let's see if I can look this up real quick. Our company. All right, I can't find it. Okay, residential. So Eversource has 4 million customers. Roughly 4 million customers. And 10,000 employees, and over 10,000 employees. So if we're talking about just making the CEOs pay zero and taking his entire pay and just writing checks to every customer, 18.85 million divided by Sorry, it's 18.8 million. Let's pull out our calculators. 18.8 million. 18,800, 123 divided by 4, 123, 123. 4.7. So, let's bring this back. $4.70 for the entire year. Your public benefits charges are what they are. Here's where I'm going to disagree with Steve Harding. If you make the CEOs pay $0 for the entire year, that's going to be a cost savings to everyone of $4.70. Is that going to do for the entire year? Is that going to make even a dent? Is that going to be even pissing into the ocean for your public benefits bill? $4.70? So this is where I'm going to disagree with Steve. Right? So I just wanted to cover that one last thing before we sign off. Let's see if there's any other questions here because we're about to sign off. New comment? Great. No, we don't. So I'm just going to check YouTube real quick. Doesn't look like we have any new comments on YouTube. So anyways, sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. There's nothing we can really do about it. If you want to, like I said, we can go through the audio at least. So do let me know in the comments at some point what you guys think about that. And for now, at least, I'm hoping to do something next week, even with Steve's not here, just me maybe doing what I just did. I'm hoping to have more live streams throughout the course of the week. We'll see. Probably not. Long week for me. Leaf season's approaching. Thanks so much to everyone who tuned in before, especially, and now, and who's up at 10:30 at night. Hopefully that's kept everybody informed. I don't know when the next one is, but we'll see you then. Good night.